Hello and welcome to Courselite, your car brochure channel, and in today's episode, the wonderful Renault 16. Hello and welcome back to Courselite, and if you're new to Courselite, we're a car brochure channel looking at car brochures from around the world for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, and occasionally we go beyond that as well. So if you're interested in cars and car brochures, please consider subscribing. Anyway, back to today's episode. It's kind of like one of my favourite cars actually. It was so advanced for the time, the Renault 16, and this particular brochure is a UK brochure for 1973. So let's have a look at that now. So here we go, the Renault 16, and we've also got a colour chart which we'll probably have a look at some point during this particular video, but let's just zoom in on the main brochure. So just taking the brochure first of all, it is in pretty good condition. Like I said, this is from 73. We do have a dealer stamp showing Alcan Motors Company Limited in Brentwood, which is always nice to see some kind of dealer stamp, particularly on these older brochures. Now the front image, so the front image is a very nice looking example of these early Renault 16. This particular one is the TL, and we'll certainly have a look at the range at this time. I do particularly like the front bumpers on these. I think they're very unusual little design. These early ones, you'll note, have got these like chrome grille on the front. It did change in 74 for a black plastic grille, but more importantly really is the rear end, isn't it? Because yes, it was a hatchback very early on. Now the Renault 16 actually was just really one generation car, first introduced in 65 had a hatchback, and it ran all the way till 1980. What a huge run on one generation. Certainly won't find that happening today, and it soon got a great reputation of being a very spacious and comfortable interior, and of course that hatchback body style for this size of vehicle was very revolutionary really. Now when it was first introduced, it really didn't have any sort of direct competition in this class of car being a hatchback. That is until the Maxi came around about 69. The Maxi came, that was only its really competition at that time. But of course the Maxi sold well in Britain, but it really didn't sell well outside of Britain. Now on the other hand, this sold really well in Europe of course, and for Britain though, these sort of late 60s or mid even to late 60s, early 70s, British cars were seen as being what you had to buy. Foreign cars were, people really were very wary about foreign cars, but this actually, for a foreign car, sold quite well in Britain as well, which really shows you how amazing these cars were. Now if we turn to the back of the brochure, so we turn to the rear and we get another example in this sort of like beige or maybe like some kind of metallic anyway, and we'll come back to that later on, but certainly a nice looking car overall. But let's stop all the waffle and actually have a look inside the brochure. Okay, and we turn the page and it's really well illustrated actually. There's some really nice clear images on this. It gets a bit wordy, so I don't think we're going to read the entire text, but let's just start with that text at the top, which starts by saying, the Renault 16, everything a car should be. It says every now and again a car is designed that seems to get everything right. The Renault 16 is such a car, so it's difficult to be modest about it. It is a superbly comfortable car with ample space for the family of 5 and all their luggage. Or the back seats can be folded away to convert it into an estate car, taking 25.5 cubic feet. It's an exceptionally powerful car with a 1565cc 5-bearing crankshaft engine developing 70 bhp, 87 bhp in the TS version. Even at high speeds, it's unusually quiet, with little more than a distant hum from a smooth, eager engine. Safety is there in full measure in the front-wheel drive, independent suspension and the powerful front discs and rear drum servo assist brakes with pressure limiter in the rear brake line. It's a car that lasts with sturdy all-steel construction and special anti-corrosion protection, and the equipment is lavish. The many standard items, see page 15, are all in the basic price, and yeah, it was pretty well equipped for the price actually. The Renault 16 is available in 3 versions: the Renault 16L, TL and TS. All illustrations and general descriptions in this brochure refer to the TL and TS versions. Details of the differences will be found under equipment on the specifications page. And that very basic L version was actually replaced around about 76 by the TL, so that was kind of like dropped to that L. So an interesting range. There was one more range actually, one more specification level added later. The Renault 16TX, and even though it's not shown in this 73 brochure because it hadn't been released yet, I've had to open this other brochure up in 78 to show it, and I think it's worth just throwing it on there because it was really unusual for the time. It was actually first launched at the Paris Motor Show in October 73, so just missing out on today's brochure, and it featured a 5-speed gearbox along with power front windows, central door locking, and was one of the very first family cars in Europe to include these. So I think that was a completely unusual, but certainly a very special car. This is a later brochure, so you can see how it changed to these sort of black grille there, but nevertheless I just wanted to introduce that. And also you notice it's got these like twin lights at the front. But anyway, I don't really want to concentrate on this second brochure, but I thought it was worth including that because it was so unusual to have a car of this class with all those features. So the main image again is showing this TL version, and now we know this is going to be like the middle version, so the L, TL and TS. But on the next page it gives you a nice image of the interior. Look at the interior again, I think it's pretty much ahead of its time even on the interior. It looks very plain, very straightforward. We do see there is a column change on there because this car was really all about space, a lot of space in what was like a medium-sized car of the time. So it was all about space and making as much space as possible. The text inside, it says, "Come inside. All the Renault TL controls and instruments are elegantly and neatly grouped. On the left of the dished steering wheel is the gear lever, and on the right the direction indicators, horn, lights and dip switch. On the fascia behind are the mileage and trip recorder, speedometer, petrol gauge, voltmeter, warning lights for ignition, water temperature, oil pressure, direction indicators, main beam, choke, handbrake and heated rear window. Panel brightness is variable. To the left are rocker switches for heated rear window, cigar lighter, ashtray and fresh airflow controls. To the right, rocker switch, lit at night, for 2-speed, windscreen wipers and the heater temperature control. A foot pedal operates the screen washer. Opposite the front passenger seat is a lockable illuminated glove box. So, like I say, well equipped for the time. And then we turn the next page and we're introduced to the seats themselves, which are interesting in their own way due to how they fold. Like I said, I'm not going to read everything in this, but let's zoom in on the main image and maybe just pick up a key point or two. So I have noticed with these black seats, I can't actually zoom in too much, otherwise I just get so many reflections you can't really see. But an interesting seat, they look like the leather, but they're actually not. They're what it refers to as a high quality stretch back vinyl. Certainly looks luxurious for what car it is, although I'm sure viewers will know I'm not a huge fan of vinyl, and I'm not a huge fan of leather for similar reasons. But if you didn't want these, you could get a brushed nylon cloth upholstery for an optional extra, which is probably what I would go for. But no doubt they're extremely comfortable seats, and they've got really interesting features like this armrest that you can fold down, so all about comfort. And also the adjust and lower, very unusually, but we'll have a look at some diagrams of that in a moment. But you would find in sort of like this time period, a lot of cars seem to go for this theory that people wanted to fold the seats down and make a bed, but I don't know how popular or how many people actually did that. Again, the rear seats are really just as interesting actually. It tells us you can fit 3 adults there. You've got that nice big, actually a really big, comfortable looking armrest. Again, this is the same vinyl, but again you can option to have nylon cloth instead as an optional extra. But more interesting than that, even the rear seat adjusts as well, so the whole seat can be moved forward to increase the luggage space, or the backrest can be hooked up under the roof and the seat tipped forward to give you estate car capacity. So yeah, folding seats, it wouldn't have been all that common at the time, but certainly makes it a much more functional car. And kind of like when we talk about hatchbacks today, this is before people really wanted a hatchback or even really knew too much about hatchbacks, so very futuristic idea. I mean, this was so early. Remember 65 when this design came out. This design was so early to have a hatchback that people really didn't know what to call it. If you looked at 1965 English Motoring magazine, it described the R16 being a large family car, but one that is neither a 4-door saloon nor an estate. Well, yes, it's a hatchback, isn't it? But they didn't really know what to describe it as. Anyway, if we look at some of the diagrams, it actually shows you how these seats can be moved. So it shows the various different ways. I had this first starting off as being your normal position, the full cargo luggage position. And then we've got something called the holiday luggage position, where they've moved that rear seat to give a bit more luggage space to the rear. We've got this called the playpen position, which is a bit unusual. I guess they've pushed that rear seat even further forward for even more room, I guess. We've got this unusual one, the family resting position. Very unusual to me. It's sort of like a long-backed, relaxing position. We've got the fully reclined position. Again, like I say, a lot of car companies seem to think you wanted to sleep in your car in the 70s. And then the final one, which is common for us today, the folding the rear seat back so you can move lots and lots of things. And then we get a few images, one of the rear with the hatch up, which we'll certainly zoom in, and it's talking about some of the optional extras as well. But let's concentrate on this main image first. So we get this same metallic blue Renault 16 TL, hatch is up. You can see all that luggage you can get in there, really introducing this as a practical car, of course. Yes, you could argue very high sill, isn't it, to lift things up, but that would be more of an argument for like early 80s, really, a criticism, wouldn't it? Late 70s, early 80s. Remember, this design is 65, so very advanced for its time. It also gives you an idea at the top there how this particular model was badged. Then it introduced the idea of possibly having an electric sunroof. The electric sunroof illustrated here is an optional extra in the Renault 16 TL and TS. It is operated by a rocker switch on the dashboard, which gives you fingertip control. When open, you can enjoy fresh air motoring to the full When closed, it is completely sealed. There is no drafts, leaks or wind noise. So some more options: cloth, you can even option leather if you wanted to. So fine quality cloth upholstery on the TL and TS, or sumptuous real leather on the TS, are available as optional extras for front and rear seats. Otherwise, a high quality stretch vinyl is fitted as standard. Electromagnetic locking system. This is a special locking system that can be fitted on the Renault 16 TS, equipped with electric front windows. When the door key is turned on, all 4 doors are automatically locked by a mechanical device. And then there's a long description that you can also have an optional automatic transmission. Although at this time, this is 73, remember, and kind of like the Renault 16 sales weren't the best around this time because of the 73 oil crisis, so I don't know how popular the automatic transmission would have been at this time. Next page is showing a nice sort of a side image, which we'll certainly have a zoom in on in a moment, and talking about the Renault 16 TS, the sporty one, high performance happily achieved. So this one, presumably the sporty one, the TS version, but a nice sort of image, and again gives you those nice proportions. Unusual pictures in these, how they kind of like don't fit in with the background, they've just been superimposed on there, but an interesting shot nevertheless. But let's have a look at the text and learn a bit more about this high performance version. So Renault 16 TS, high performance happily achieved. The letters TS stand for Tourisme Special, and they mean a car that combines the ability to cruise all day at high speeds with comfort so luxurious you don't notice how far or how long you've travelled. In both these aspects, the Renault 16 TS excels, and it does so in a quiet, eager and effortless way. Its performance figures speak for it. 102 miles per hour, 0 to 50 in 8.5 seconds. Yeah, remember this time the user at 0 to 50 was quite often used in brochure, so it sounds faster than it is by today's talk, but still a pretty quick car for the time period, considering the type of car it was. It also gives you some ideas of sort of the equipment it has on there. So standard items include electrically heated rear window, thermostatically controlled electric cooling fan and an alternator, ensuring full charge even at idling speed. There are also interior courtesy lights, twin sun visors, passenger vanity mirror, 2-speed wipers, 4 jet windscreen washers, day-night rear view mirror, passenger grab handles, map reading light, clock with sweep second hand, a rev counter and reversing lights. And at the bottom it talks about the extras you can have on this model, so electromagnetic door locks that lock all doors at once, tinted windows with laminated windscreen, electric windows, electric sunroof, automatic transmission and a choice of leather or cloth upholstery. So you really could spec this up to be quite a luxurious car of its day. And then we continue to look at this higher spec model, the TS or the sportier model. We'll look at the images and we'll look at how the gauges are different. So I'll look at the front end of the Renault 16 TS. One of the things I do like about the 16 again is this sort of like curved design on the bonnet, how it flows through to the badge. I think overall it's a nicely styled car. Featured here in a very 70s colour, isn't it? This brown, or maybe more of a bronze or metallic brown, but very 70s colour, but I do actually quite like it. Then we have a look on the inside. I do prefer the interior overall, particularly the seats, which of course you can have on the other model as well. This is the cloth seats and they look very comfortable. Much more approved for myself, I would say, but you know, that's just my choice. You can see the dials are different as well. Very nice gauges. They've gone for a round design. I do like the other ones as well, the other model, but this obviously looks a bit more sporty with a rev gauge on there and a really nice looking clock, and it's even got the seconds hand on there as well. Now this here incidentally would have been your optional extra switch for the electric windows and the electric sunroof. An unusual position there, but that's where it lived if you didn't spec it. And then after that, if we have a look on there, we can see that we've got a petrol gauge, voltmeter and temperature gauge, then the rev counter and speedometer with mileage and trip recorder. The dial also contains a warning light for the choke. Other warning lights grouped to the right include main beam, directional indicator, heated rear window, handbrake, brake wear, oil pressure, ignition and long range beam. And then finally further to the right are the switch console for the heated rear window and the 2-speed wiper. The foot operated wiper washer is located near the clutch pedal, so we can't actually see that in this image. Overall, a pretty classy looking interior. And then the next page gives us an image of the interior, first showing this way it can actually all fold down to rest. Also gives you a good idea what the cloth seats look like. And then again with the seats in the normal position with that sort of centre front armrest in the down position. We then get this very interesting image of the construction. And then finally the specifications. So let's have a look at that now. So it starts by telling us the coachwork is an all steel integral construction with bolt-on front wings for easy removal and replacement, the whole being dipped to waist level in an anti-corrosion paint in production. Engine, so it's a front wheel drive, cylinders 4 in line, detachable wet liners, valve gear overhead, inclined in a V in the TS, push rods and rockers, chain driven camshaft, cylinder head, light alloy, hemispherical combustion chamber TS only, coolant, sealed containing water and glycol with rust inhibitor, protection down to minus 35. We've got a Weber carburetor, fan electric, thermostatically controlled. Capacity is a 1565 cc engine, so it's going to be 70 bhp at 5200 rpm on the L and TL, and then 87.5 bhp at 5750 rpm on the TS. 5 bearing crankshaft and a 12 volt battery. Now the transmissions are 4-speed all synchromesh unit. Automatic optional extra for the TL and the TS. Brakes are hydraulic with discs in the front, drums at the rear, servo assisted. Suspensions independent on all 4 wheels by torsion buoys, longitudinal at the front and transverse at the rear. Hydraulic shock absorbers, anti-roll bars front and rear. So we've got tyres, gives you a bit of information about that, different on the L and TL towards the TS, steering, rack and pinion, safety features, child-proof locks on rear doors, locks on both front doors, disc type steering wheel, excellent visibility through wide windscreen and rear windows, no quarter lights. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it says there, the thief's usual method of entry, dashboard warning lights for brake wear and anti-theft steering lock. So instruments and controls. Instruments in a cowled panel include mileage and trip recorder, speedometer, voltmeter, fuel gauge, water temperature gauge, TS, rev counter, TS, warning lights for handbrake, brake wear, direction indicators, ignition, oil pressure, water temperature, choke, main beam, heated rear window and long range beam, TS. The hand controls for lights, horn, headlamp flasher and self-cancelling indicators are on the steering column. And then the equipment in this little star kind of like chart telling you exactly what you've got also includes the L, which you haven't really talked too much about in this brochure. I was a bit embarrassed about, but they did actually drop the L in 76 anyway. I think they really wanted to show the 16 as a higher equipment vehicle than the actual L had. I'm not going to go through all this because really we've talked about this in quite a bit of detail already, but of course you can have a look at it and see what had. I think you should be able to go through this in your own time if you really wanted to see every bit of equipment. Also goes on to tell us about the optional equipment. Again, we've talked about this already, but if we go to one side, underneath where it talks about capacities, it does give you the date there. This brochure was finalised for printing on the 30th of November 1973. And it also goes on to say this brochure does not show modifications or alterations introduced in the UK after the above date. And finally we get the little Renault badge printed in England and Renault Limited with the address. And then finally we may as well have a look at this paint sample for the full Renault range for 1973. So it starts with this unusual orange, but this isn't a Renault 16 colour. This would have been on cars like the Renault 5, the Renault 12, Renault 15 and 17. Then there's a blue, but again that's not for the Renault 16, and then a yellow, which again is not for the Renault 16 either, but I think that yellow was a really good colour actually for the Renault 4. And if we move along, and yeah, they're terrible colour names, aren't they? Red, white, yellow. It wasn't very imaginative. But anyway, if we move along, red. I think red was pretty much all the Renault range at the time. And white certainly was for all the Renault range. Moving on, again for probably one and only unique name, plum metallic. Now all the metallics, all the metallics I'm going to tell you about, but these metallics were all for the Renault 16, but not the L. You couldn't have the Renault 16L in metallic, but you could have plum metallic. You could have this rather nice green metallic, and then moving again along still further, we could have this blue metallic, but not for the L. This beige metallic, but not for the L. I think that beige metallic was one of the colours featured in the brochure actually. And then we've got a second green metallic, surprisingly enough, called exactly the same name, green metallic, but you could still have it for the Renault 16, but not the L version. And moving along, we've got this quite a modern colour really, this grey metallic. Again, you can have it for the 16, but not the L. And then this unusual blue. As far as I know, I think you can only have this for the Renault van actually, so certainly not the 16s. And then another green metallic called green metallic, but that was only available for the Renault 5. So there we go, one of my favourite cars, the Renault 16 and this 1973 brochure and colour chart. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you remember these cars, or if you've got an opinion about these cars, please jot them in the comments. I always really do like seeing those. If you've not done already, please do consider liking and subscribing, and thank you for everyone who has subscribed already. Very easy to subscribe from the screen, and it is of course completely free. I've also chosen a couple of videos you may want to see. They're appearing on the screen now. If you want to click on them, it'll take you to some of the previous videos. But overall, thank you so much for watching today, and we'll see you very soon. Take care and goodbye.